Dress your champions all you want, but it's the accessories that make your champions look fabulous. Hello, everyone. Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and we are here to talk about accessories. Now, I did a fairly big guide a couple weeks ago about artifacts, where I went very in-depth, and we brought up a bunch of spreadsheets and charts, and I talked about what stats you're looking for, why you're looking for the different stats, what sets you're looking for them on, and overall, you guys seem to really enjoy that. If you have not seen that, I'll drop a link to that right here. But it was very informative. It is admittedly a very dry piece of content, and it goes from all the way from new player stuff to very late game things that you may not know and make the best out of the gear that you have. I want to follow that up with accessories. Fortunately, accessories are a little more direct. They're a little easier to talk about. Unfortunately, accessories are not necessarily harder to cleanse. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We will definitely get into that when we get into this discussion. But I do want to thank you guys all for hanging out. Definitely appreciate you guys. If you like content like this, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, smash that. I definitely appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Let's go dive into accessories. All right, guys, I am up here in the corner. So, hi, little mini me talking to you in your ear. And let's go over all of this stuff. We have a lot of things to cover, and this is going to range from very basic stuff to very advanced stuff. So hopefully this is still a good format for you. Obviously, it's a little bit different because accessories are treated very differently in Raid. First of all, accessories, their base stats. Rings have attack, defense, and HP as their main stats. They're always going to be those flat stats. And their subs can be attack percent, defense percent, HP, and HP percent. Stats cannot have the main stat be the same as the substat. So if you have a flat attack ring, you'll never get a flat attack sub. So don't worry about that. Basically, the ascensions for rings are also pretty similar. They can only ascend to the flat attack, HP, or defense. So generally for the extensions, you are looking for the best matching stat or appropriate stat. And when I say or appropriate, because sometimes you don't mind if you get HP or defense, particularly if you're building an HP ring or a defense ring on a champion where you just want the tankiness and you don't necessarily care that it's not defense or HP specifically. You may care. It may not be a big deal. It really kind of depends on the build. There are also some outlier situations where you may actually not mind HP as an ascension on an attack ring or attack ascension on an HP ring, for example, vice versa. But those are going to be edge cases. For the most part, you're either going to want attack on an attack ring or HP or defense on an HP or defense ring. Amulets here, they're actually pretty simple as well. Amulets only have 4 main stats: flat attack, flat defense, flat HP, and crit damage. The crit damage is important. You want crit damage on your nukers, period, full stop. There's a few champions where you could argue that maybe they gain a little bit from having their main stat instead of crit damage, but for the most part, a damage dealing champion, if they are doing crit damage, they have a 100% crit rate, the crit damage bonus you get will outshine however much flat stats you get from the main. Now, there's going to be some exceptions to that just because of making sets work, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And as far as the subs, you have the same as the main, so the attack, defense, HP, and crit damage. You also have accuracy and resistance. So these can be very helpful if you're building a high accuracy champion or a high resistance champion, or both in some cases. Generally, the ascensions are the same as the main stats, so you're going to want a matching or, again, an appropriate stat. So attack as an ascension stat is not the worst thing on a crit damage amulet if you're using it on an attack-based champion. You still would rather have the crit damage because the crit damage is much bigger. Otherwise, you're generally looking for HP or defense on an HP or defense amulet. Finally, we get to the banners. Banners have attack, defense, or HP flat. I have stars by those mains because banners get more flat stats from their base stat. So keep that in mind. An attack banner is worth more than an attack ring just from the base stats of it. Same with defense, same with HP. Accuracy and resistance, however, are going to match the same stats you could get off of a chest piece. They max out at 96 on a 6-star, but these are ways you can get accuracy or resistance. For the big champions, you need accuracy or resistance. Also of note, you can only have the main 3 stats, so attack, defense, and HP, either percent or not percent, and speed on banners. Banners are the only accessory that can get speed, which makes speed super important on banners. As far as the ascensions will match the main stat. The attack, HP, and defense are slightly more valuable than the otherwise attack, HP, or defense ascensions, but otherwise the ascensions are just as valuable as normal. You're going to want matching or appropriate. And in this case too, a resistance banner, you're probably going to want resistance, but it's not necessarily going to hurt if you get HP or defense, for example. And an accuracy banner, if you have enough accuracy, it doesn't help to get too much more. So if you get an extra stat that you want instead, that's not bad on an accuracy banner. Also, vice versa, if you're looking for a defense banner, for example, but you need just a little more accuracy, that accuracy ascension could be enough. It's up to 29 for accuracy and for resistance, and 29 could be enough to swing you right where you need it to be. So I hinted at this a little bit earlier, but there's the substats you're looking for. For rings, you're generally looking for a percent that matches the main stat. So you're looking for attack percent on attack rings, HP percent on HP rings, defense percent on defense rings. The optional is the other percents. So other percentages in general are good because rings are a good source of those percentage substats. They're actually fairly easy to get because you can only have a max of 2 flat stats on a ring just because there's only 3 flat stats available and one of them is the main. You're probably looking for HP on most rings that are not HP rings in the first place. For a defense ring, you're probably looking for HP. And for an attack ring, you're probably leaning more towards HP than defense percent, although both can be viable. HP percent tends to be a better substat for attack-based champions than defense percent, depending on where you're going to be using in the game. However, that could be true. Not needed are going to be your attack percent or attack on defense or HP rings. Generally, you don't need those. That doesn't mean there aren't champions that can't benefit from those, and it's not an instant sell if you have those substats on there, because again, you only have 5 substats, you only have 4 spots. So rings are fairly easy to get lots of good stats on. So you can be very picky about what you're going to get with a ring. Amulets, generally you're going to want accuracy on an attack amulet specifically. Now, attack amulets are generally not great, because you really are going to use them almost exclusively for bomb champions. So you're not going to get a lot of value out of an attack amulet. But if you do keep an attack amulet, again, for bomb champions, you want that accuracy on them. So an attack amulet is generally not worth keeping middle to late game if it doesn't have accuracy on it. And honestly, you don't need to keep a lot of attack amulets in the first place. I'm at a point, for example, I only keep them if they're in cool sets because the bonus other stuff is so important that I don't necessarily care if it doesn't have accuracy on it if it's the right set. But again, we'll get into that a little bit later. Meanwhile, if you're talking about a crit damage amulet, you're generally going to want the attack stat of the champion you're building on there. So generally that's going to be attack, but if you're building a defense-based nuker or an HP-based nuker, you'd like to have additional HP or defense on that. And again, it doesn't hurt to have other useful stats on these as well, but for the most part, secondary stats are secondary stats. Nobody complains about getting defense or HP, and optionally, sometimes you really want the accuracy or the resistance, or sometimes even both on an amulet. What you don't want is you generally don't want resistance on crit damage, because building a resistance-based nuker is generally not something you do. Somebody called out in the comments of an exception to that. Maybe if you have a very specific build, you might want a little bit of resistance on there. But for the most part, I would rather have a crit damage amulet that has accuracy, HP, attack, and defense, and then it rolls the best of whatever those stats are, and all the rest of those are generally useful stats. And I would rather have flat attack than flat resistance on a crit damage amulet for an HP or a defense-based champion anyway, in most cases. Not always, because the resistance just generally doesn't do much. Meanwhile, if you have a crit damage and attack on a defense or HP amulet, those tend to not be super useful because generally if you're building an HP or defense amulet, you're building a non-nuker. So you're not looking for a lot of extra damage. So that extra attack and that extra crit damage are not super important. That doesn't mean that they don't help, because sometimes every little bit of stat counts, and sometimes you are building a support champion that just happens to have max crit rate. But if you're not maxing their damage with a crit damage amulet, you're not looking for crit damage as something important, so you'd rather have resistance, you'd rather have accuracy, you'd rather have HP or defense as a sub. Stat banners and accuracy banners are treated a little bit differently. Speed is one of the most important things you can get on a banner. Early on, you're going to just take any banner you can get because banners give you so much extra stats, but eventually you're going to want speed on almost every banner you can get. You also want a matching percent stat on them. So if you have an attack banner, you're going to want attack percent, very much like the ring. And in fact, other than the fact that banners have speed and could be accuracy resistance, it's very much the same thing for a stat banner as it is a ring, other than the matching percent is a little more important, and speed is definitely more important. For accuracy resistance banners, you're generally looking for speed and percentage subs of just about any kind. The exception is, again, you're not building nuking-based resistance champions, so you're probably not going to have a resistance banner with attack or attack percent because you're looking for a tanky resistance champion. So that's the only one that really is a not needed. So you're looking for percent subs, probably HP or defense on a resistance banner, and for an accuracy banner, you might have a nuker that needs accuracy, so they may want that attack percentage. You might have one that's an HP or defense-based nuker, or they might be just a plain old support champion. So you're going to want those support stats. So that's why you're looking for the percent subs that are important, and optional, you want additional percent subs. One of the best accuracy banners you could possibly ever have was one that would have speed and all 3%. You roll it up, and you're happy with it and you move on, and it'll be a great piece on your account for a long time to come. Hopefully it rolls heavily into speed or heavy into one of the other substats, but it's still a flexible banner that will probably live on your account for a while, regardless of what it rolls. Accessories have gotten weird with sets. And I say have gotten weird because early on in the game, at least when I started playing, there were almost no sets for accessories. The few you had were some of the accessory-only sets. Now we have 9-piece sets, so it's worth noting where you can get all these things and what you have. So I'll be referring to things as non-set, accessory-only, and 9-piece sets. So what I mean by that is your spider accessories are all non-sets. You cannot get anything other than non-set accessories in spider. Accessories only are things like your reaction or your blood shield that do something specific that can only ever be on a ring. They technically stack with each other, so if you have 3 different blood shields, you'll get a bigger shield. If you have 3 different reaction pieces, you'll get a better chance of having reaction proc for you. If you have 3 cleansing or 3 refresh or 3 revenge, etc., etc. So 9-piece sets, on the other hand, are part of top and bottom sets, and they have bonuses through 1 piece all the way through 9, and they are very, very valuable. You can get Stone Skin and Protection from Hydra. You've got Supersonic and Merciless from Cursed City. You've got Siege giving you Feral. And finally, you have the limited set that are either on a pay-to-access Forge Pass, such as Slayer, or in a limited edition dungeon like Pinpoint. And right now, you can't get either of those. We'll certainly see what happens if there's ever a Forge Pass for Slayer, or maybe there might be a Forge Pass for Pinpoint later on. But those are your limited sets, and those are very, very valuable because you cannot get them very easily. All right, some general facts about accessories. As you progress, non-set accessories will become so easy to get, you'll start to become extremely picky about them and only start to keep the best. So what I mean by that is, as I mentioned before, rings are easy to farm because rings only have 1 main stat, 5 different substats beyond that main stat. You're generally looking for one of 2 or 3 stats to match with that main stat in the first place. And then if they're not rolling into it, they're not necessarily a great ring, so you can start selling them. Early on, you're going to be looking for pieces that just make your camps better. So they give you the boosts you need to give you more of whatever stat you're looking for. Eventually, you're going to want the best of the best if you're going with a non-accessory set. Accessory-only sets, on the other hand, can add some pretty big value. Reaction set was the standard in PvP for a while, and can still be very useful in PvP, although it's fallen off a little bit for the 9-piece sets. Reaction helps quite a bit if you don't want to get crit, which really doesn't happen a lot outside of PvP. The cleansing gear, niche but definitely useful, can bring some interesting options to your account, can sometimes surprise somebody in a PvP fight. The refresh gear can be very powerful, even if it's only a 5% chance. If you're taking a lot of turns, 5% chance will proc several times. So some of these sets are very useful. Some of these sets are not quite as useful. Sometimes they're very niche builds as well. For example, Blood Shield rings are very niche, but there's very specific places where a Blood Shield ring is absolutely amazing. So it doesn't hurt to have some of these and have really good ones. Revenge is another one that I like. And in fact, I like to point out that revenge accessories are so easy to get. You take your clan gold and you buy up as many of them as you can early on. And when you are struggling to access 6-star accessories, you can get revenge gear that is a guaranteed 5 or 6-star epic and legendary, and they'll be absolutely amazing for your account early on. So buy those revenge accessories early on. You can eventually start selling them later on as you get some of the better ones, but they will simply be better than some of the stuff you'll farm from Spider for a long time to come. Finally, we have the 9-piece sets. 9-piece sets offer extreme flexibility and a ton of bonus stats. They make the pieces better than they might immediately appear because, for example, Feral gives me 40% accuracy from having a single piece of it, which means that if I am worried about getting the stats I need, a Feral ring might be better than any other ring because I need that 40 extra accuracy. Or the extra accuracy of having a Feral amulet may be better than having an amulet that actually has accuracy on it as a substat, because I get flat 40. Now, I can't glyph that up, I can't roll it up either, but it's 40. Plus, if I get an extra Feral, that's extra speed. Extra speed from having 2 accessories is actually pretty amazing. That's why Pinpoint was such a great set as well. They can give you extra resistance, extra HP, again, extra speed, extra accuracy. There's all kinds of cool stats. Some of them give you crit rate, crit damage, attack. You can get a lot of extra powerful stats from those 9-piece sets. And that's why a late game bad piece, 9-piece set piece, that was a bit of a tongue twister there. That's why a late game 9-piece set piece is so valuable, because getting that 9th piece in some sets can be absolutely amazing and make the difference between a set working and not working. So getting that 9th piece for protection could be worth missing out on 500 defense, for example, or it could be worth missing out on 40 crit damage. Sometimes getting your champion into the right set can be more valuable than getting the stats from those sets, particularly when you're talking about the end game 9-piece sets. But they give you so much additional build flexibility, even if you don't use them at 9-piece, it's absolutely amazing. Eventually, the non-set pieces were going to be extremely limiting for you. The big problem that we have right now with accessories is we have faction-specific accessories that we need to keep some level of to be able to gear champions, but we only have 1,500 spots, which means that if you split it up among the 15 factions we have, you only have up to 100 accessories per faction. Now, that may sound like plenty, but when I need to keep Stone Skin and Protection and Pinpoint and Feral, and then I need a good attack piece and a good crit damage piece and a good banner with speed and a good resistance banner and a good banner that may not have a lot of speed, the amount of different builds and different stats you need on all of these different pieces makes dealing with your accessories an absolute nightmare in the end game. And Plarium does need to do something about this. Hopefully, with some of these things, you can at least kind of get yourself towards the end game. And I would not be surprised if some endgame players are basically selling all of their basic artifacts, unless there's something with triple or quad roll speeds, for example, or something absolutely utterly amazing like that, because the value of the non-set pieces is at an all-time low when you get to the end game. So finally, we're going to talk a little bit about accessory progression. We've got early game where the stats are going to be super important. This is where you're just kind of running Spider and you may not even have the banner you want to, or you may not even have a banner. So putting a ring on a champion is better than not having a ring on a champion, particularly early in the game. Eventually, you're going to start to want to focus on the stats a little bit more. That's where you sort of move into progression, where you start to farm down and start selling some of those non-set pieces, or more specifically, you sell some of the bad ones. So if I have an attack ring that doesn't have attack percentage on it, I may not even bother rolling it up, and I may start selling it because I have an attack ring with an attack percent on it already. I have a couple of them. I don't need them anymore. Or eventually, as you start going further on, maybe I'm going to start selling some of those 5-star pieces because the 6-star epics are so much better than the 5-star epics or the 5-star rares, for example. It makes a huge difference. And when you can get gear easier, because yes, you do have 15 different factions to farm the gear on, but rings don't have a lot of options. Amulets don't have a lot of options. Banners, honestly, still don't have a lot of options. They've got a few more, but they don't have a lot of options. So as a result, it becomes easier to focus farm on your accessories. Plus, for amulets and rings, you can compromise just a little bit to get the sets you're looking for later on. If you're not looking for the sets, then you want all the stats you possibly can. So you start working on removing your low star, your low rarity non-set pieces, and then you get into the late game. And again, these are very vague terms. These are going to really kind of depend on what type of accessories you've got. But basically, as you move into the late game, it's time to start moving away from the non-set pieces. This means you're not going to keep all of them. You're going to only keep some of the best of the best. So maybe it means you're only keeping your legendary and your mythical rings or amulets or banners, for example. And to be fair, amulets are probably the easiest to compromise piece out there just because there's so many flat stats and there's no percentage stats other than crit damage. If you don't have a particularly good amulet, that's fine. For the most part, you're just looking for it to hit in the right stats you're looking for. But for the most part, if you lose 10 points of accuracy because you don't have the best amulet out there, you can probably make that up somewhere else. On the other hand, the difference between getting attack percentage and flat attack as a substat can be pretty huge on some of these things. But eventually the end game is about the 9-piece sets. And it's not just about making a 9-piece set, although that can be huge, particularly things like Protection or Feral, where the 9-piece has a huge benefit, or Merciless, where there's a huge 9-piece benefit. A 4 or 5-piece set can be huge as well. Think a 5-piece pinpoint gives you some level of intercept, as well as a bunch of extra speed and an extra accuracy that you may want to put on a champion that may also have some nuking gear or some more defense gear. Or perhaps you might go with pinpoint and stone skin, or maybe you might go with stone skin plus nuking gear. So there's all kinds of options that the 9-piece sets open up for you. And what's important with them is, for example, those nuking champions that you're going to deal with, they're locked into having 4 pieces of artifacts that match the set. So that means you're going to have at least 2 accessories to give yourself one of the 9-piece sets with them. So you want stone skin, you're going to need 2 good stone skin pieces that are a ring, a banner, or an amulet. Or you're going to be compromising with your build. Sometimes it can be difficult to compromise with a nuker. That's why those are so important. And that's really what you need to come away with, is the way the game has changed. And this is why artifacts are kind of confusing and accessories are kind of confusing. These 9-piece sets have become super powerful, which is fine. But for accessories, there's so many different items we need. There are so many different sets you need. And the fact that you need them from so many different factions really can make them hard to wade through. But hopefully this has given you some insight into how you can wade through your accessories. Maybe it'll give you a chance to cleanse out your accessories a little bit more. I actually do some of these gear cleanses occasionally on stream. I actually do offer a paid takeover service that does involve gear cleansing as well. So you can check that out on my Discord, or you can check out my Twitch streams to see me do some of these live. I like to call it gear cleansing ASMR. And, we can always cleanse gear together a little bit. So as I cleanse my account, I often talk about specifically what I'm looking for, and hopefully that helps you out as well. So I appreciate you guys hanging out. Again, hit that subscribe button if you get a chance to. I really appreciate it, especially if you are still here and still watching. I've got plenty of content that can help you progress in Raid, and hopefully is kind of entertaining as well. So appreciate you guys sticking around, and until the next video, I'm Bront CatHerder.